Welcome to Hashtag History. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah. And if you are a history nerd,
or even if you are a history hater,
this is the podcast for you.
Even if history was your least favorite subject in school, we can guarantee you will like this podcast because we talk about all the things that your history textbooks did not.
That's things like how Ted Kennedy drove his car off a bridge and was able to escape the car but left a woman inside to die and didn't report it until a day later.
Or how the pharaoh Akhenaten was so disliked by Egyptians that they literally purged his name from nearly all of their records and pretended like he never existed.
Or how the FBI had a file on Frank Sinatra that was 2,000 pages long.
Or even how on opening day at Disneyland, it was so hot and the pavement had been so recently poured that women's heels sunk into it.
And we do all of this while drinking a custom-made cocktail specific to that week's episode.
So grab a drink, take a seat, and hang out with us each week as we learn all about history's greatest stories of controversy,
conspiracy,
and corruption. Hashtag History can be found on all major podcast platforms, and that's hashtag spelled out, hashtag history.
We can also be found on Instagram at hashtag history_podcast.
Welcome to Dialogue, a true crime conversation. I'm your host, Rebecca Sebastian, and hello, and thank you. You guys have been sending me ideas. Last week on the podcast, I put out that I am looking for new closing questions, and you guys have sent me some great ideas. I'm really loving them, but I'm still looking for the one. I might have found it, but I'm open to more. So I'm going to keep that open for a few more days, I think till Saturday. So for anyone who missed the announcement last week or didn't see it on social media, I ask every single one of my guests at the end of an episode, what is keeping you up at night? And I've been loving their answers, but I've been asking it for a year and a half. Time for a new question. And honestly, the responses I'm getting confirmed that for me because these are such good questions. So I'm actually really excited to start asking my new guests for the next series. I'm excited to ask them the new question. So I'm going to keep this open. You're listening to this if the day it drops on Wednesday, March 3rd. I'm going to keep this open through Saturday, what would that be? 6th. And then after that, I'm going to make my decision and I will announce it. And whoever's question I choose, I'm going to send them a True Crime Dialogue merch and swag pack. I will give them on-air credit and I will use the question every week on the podcast for as long as that question remains the one. So it's kind of cool. And if you have an idea, please send it my way via social media. You can message me. I'm at Dialogue Pod. You can go to my website, rebeccasebastian.com, and there's contact forms there to get in touch with me. Super easy way. And I have an email address, rebecca@yellowtapetruecrime.com. Another way to get hold of me. So thank you to everyone who has put in an idea. I love them. Keep them coming. Today is exciting. In addition to a great interview, you're going to hear 2 amazing trailers. One for a podcast I'm really enjoying called Hashtag History. If you love history, it's for you. If you hate history, guess what? It's also for you because it makes history fun. And they're really taking the high level, kind of like best of in terms of history. That's what Rachel and Leah, the hosts, are doing on their show. So you can hear that. Actually, you might have already heard that trailer. I'm pretty sure you would have just heard it. So that's Hashtag History, and you might hear more from them on Dialogue in the future. And in the middle of the show, you're also going to hear an extended promo from Tim and Lance at the Crawlspace Network for their new show, Missing. Now, you might know that these guys have done Missing Maura Murray. Well, they're broadening that reach. They are expanding that platform and featuring missing stories from all walks of life, different people, not just the Missing Maura Murray case anymore. And I'm delighted to share with you the series in the middle of today's podcast about the case of Phoenix Colden. They're going to be doing a series on her case, and they interview her mom, and you get to hear a really, really great clip from that show on today's episode. And finally, I want to say thank you to Laura Norton of the Fall Line Podcast. She actually connected me to today's guest, and I'm just so glad she did because it was a real gift to me actually to interview her. I always leave my interviews feeling genuinely honored that people talk to me, but I left my interview with today's guest feeling like I needed to hear it. It was such an encouraging word, and so I am happy and thrilled to introduce Donna Green to you. Donna Green is a relentless advocate for missing persons cases. She advocates for families who are seeking their loved one, and she is also the mother of a missing child, and she has never stopped looking for her son Raymond for 40 years. Her story is heartbreaking, and it might make you upset, and I'm going to link to all of Donna's work, places you can find her, more about her case, and the ways you can support her. And honestly, just sharing the word about her story and her work is the best way, because she's just out there doing this work, and it's hard. I mean, this is kind of heartbreaking, thankless work, and she has a long road ahead of her. She's done so much, and I just want to do anything I can to help, and I have a feeling you will feel that way as well. So please do look to the show notes for some links on ways you can activate around Donna's story. And with that, I'm going to let her tell you her unbelievable journey from being a young mother in an impossible situation to just the amazing hope she spreads now through the work that she does. So here is Donna Green. Donna, I want to welcome you to Dialogue Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure and honor, really. Your story is remarkable, and I thought that's where we should start is how the reason we're talking probably started by what happened in 1978. So maybe you can take our listeners back in time. You were a young mother, and tell us what happened.
Well, in 1978, I was 16. And I was pregnant, and when I got ready to have my baby, I went to Grady Hospital when I went in labor. And after I had Raymond, I went back up to the nursery to see him, and there was a young lady walked up. She just walked up on the side of me, and I acknowledged her, and I was just looking at Raymond, and then she asked which one was mine. And I pointed to Raymond, and she was like, "Oh, he's so beautiful." And then she said, I have my niece. She pointed to a little girl and said, "My niece is here. My sister just had a baby." And I, told her how pretty her baby was. And we stood there for a minute, just, chit-chatting. And then I excused myself to go to the room. And she asked, "Can I hang out with you in your room since my sister is asleep?" And I told her yes. So she came in the room with me. I didn't think anything of it. I'm just 16, I ain't thinking anything. So she came to the room, and we talked a while. And then after that, she left. She came back a little that evening, and she stayed a few minutes and left back out. She just came in. We watched Lucy together, and we laughed about Lucy, whatever, and she left. The next day she came, and she started asking me questions about Raymond, well, what's his whole name, what's his dad's name? And pretty much everything she asked me, I told her, not thinking anything. Cause
sure.
She looked pretty young too, maybe 20 maybe. So in my mind, I'm, finna get a new friend. She seemed to be really, really nice. So either I was just really naive. So, but anyway, so she came and asked the questions, and I gave her the answers and everything. And then the next day, when I got ready to go home, she asked, could she get a ride? She came to the room that morning and found that I was getting ready to go. So she came back that evening, right when I was packing up to go, and she was like, "Hey, can I get a ride? Because my sister's still asleep." Now, it didn't dawn on me. No, she said that she got left. That's what she said. she got left. So the people that was with me said that they could take her home. They dropped me off first, and then they took her home. A few days later, that was on the 3rd, I think on the 6th, she showed up at my house, knocked on the door. I had been having company all day coming in to see the baby. So when she showed up at the door, I was really surprised to see her. I was a little like, this don't go together. This. But when you got that feeling, but since you're young and you haven't really had that feeling before, what do you do with that feeling? Like, what does that feeling mean? I couldn't identify what that feeling meant. So, but I knew it wasn't a good feeling. So I kind of looked over. I didn't see no car. I said, well, how did you get here? She said, I got here. I came on the bus. So I'm thinking, it's November. It's cold. She came way over here on the bus to see me. She must really want to be my friend. Again, that's my naive thinking.
So generous of you. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Well, you just don't think like that. At that time, no babies was getting stole or taken or anything like that. I hadn't heard of anything like that. So my mind wouldn't be on something is wrong, even though I kind of felt like something just wasn't right. But like I say, I couldn't identify why I was having a feeling. So she came in and we talked a little while. And then she, it was time for me to go take care of myself, And so I said, well, I'm getting ready to go run and take a shower, thinking that she was finna go. I was ready for her to go because she had been there over an hour. I was ready for her to go. But I just couldn't say that, because I'm thinking she called the bus. But then, so she said, oh, I'll just wait till you get out the shower. So that kind of sent an antenna up for me too. So my brother was sitting there, my older brother, he was sitting there kind of nodding and watching TV too. And I kind of hit him and I said, hey, Tony, I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to take a shower. Wash the baby while I go take a shower. He said, okay. So I went upstairs. I wasn't even in the shower like 10, maybe 15 minutes when in my spirit, something just wasn't right. So I got out the shower. I didn't even dry off. I just put on my clothes, and when I ran down the steps. I don't know why, but I didn't see my baby on the sofa because I left him on the sofa asleep. So when I got down to the bottom of the steps, my brother was asleep, and I woke him up, and I was like, where's the baby? He was like, what do you mean, where's the baby? I'm like, where's the baby? And he said, the baby started crying. Your friend picked him up and started walking with him. And so I ran to the door, and I never seen her again.
It's so unimaginable. It's so hard to get my head around. And, I'm sure you've told the story before, and I knew the premise, but hearing you tell it is so gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
I want to say what happens next, but I'm just sitting in the moment with you. You probably were exhausted. You just had a baby, not even a couple days ago. I mean,
right.
How are you even processing, and what is the first thing you do?
Well, I remember just running outside, and I seen a neighbor, and I asked her, did she see a lady with a baby? And she said that she saw a lady get in a car with a baby at the corner. And I just ran back in the house and called 911, not understanding this is really happening to me.
Sure.
So the police came. It was like maybe a car, maybe two cars came. Back in that time, it was 1978. So, you wouldn't have just all of the stuff that you have now. So they came out and took a report, went around a little bit, and then that was it. So I'm thinking in a moment now they're going to bring the baby back.
Right. Right. How far could she have gone in that short time?
Right. So I'm thinking in a moment they're going to bring the baby back. And then the next day, they came in, they came and just asked some more questions. And I'm thinking, okay, they finna go get my baby. That wasn't the case. Then they just kind of said, because I'm calling down there every day, and they kind of said, well, when we hear something, we'll let you know. So that went for years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So how to wrap my head around it? It was quite difficult to realize that baby then got stole, actually stole. At that time, like, who does that? It was before the Wayne Williams and all that. So I just never heard of anybody taking anybody's baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it was just, it was a lot of stuff came after that, a whole lot of stuff came after that. I wasn't quite accepted in the community because people say I gave the baby away.
Oh,
Why would
God.
why would I let somebody in the house and to take my baby? I gave, so it was so much came from that it was just unreal things that transpired after that. She just kind of walked off and disappeared with the baby. She just really disappeared in the thin air.
And did you get the sense there was a real active investigation going on, or were they just sort of casually looking? I mean, and maybe what you knew then might be different from what you know now in terms of...
Yeah, like they told me that at that time they was black marketing and selling babies overseas. That's what they said then. They had no, I don't know what that came from. I don't know. I just felt like nobody, I don't know. I just, at that time, I was just feeling like, nobody knew how to handle that. So everybody kind of just didn't handle it, which
Right.
kind of left me out there on my own because I knew no one that had a baby that was missing. So, and the police wasn't kind. And when I say they wasn't kind, I don't mean that they was mean or ugly. I just mean that they just didn't deal with me. They didn't know anything. They didn't talk to me, So there really wasn't anybody on my side to say, hey, we're going to figure this out or anything like that. It was just, it happened and it's just something that I had to deal with. But, at that time I was numb for months because I'm thinking every day they're going to bring the baby home.
Right.
And then a month later, I'm like, when are they going to bring the baby home? Because on TV, every time something happened, they fix it within that hour,
Sure.
So the naiveness of me just thinking when they're going to bring the baby home, So, yeah, that's where I was then.
So did you ever go to the hospital, or did the police say they went to the hospital to interview to see if there was security, or did anybody have any record of this woman? And she did identify herself to you, which was probably not her real name, right?
Yeah, they said that it wasn't her. She said her name was Lisa. They said that probably wasn't her right name,
Sure.
everything. She wore a scarf, so I never saw her hair. It was just a lot of things that they said probably wasn't true. Whether they went down to the hospital or not, I don't know because when I went back years later to get because they wasn't doing anything years later, so I figured I'd just go get the file, a copy of the file, and see what they did do, and just kind of work the case for myself. And they couldn't find the case, they couldn't find the case, so I don't know who did what because the case just disappeared now. They pulled up a case for 1948, but they couldn't find Raymond's case. So I don't exactly know what they did.
So there is no paperwork, no case file, nothing?
No, and see what it was, because I had called National Missing Children. I just assumed, now this is like 20 years later. I just assumed that he was on National Missing Children, and the reason why I called him, because I never saw him on the milk carton or anything like that. Well, they had no record. They didn't have anything on Raymond, which made me, and they say I would have to have a number, a file number. And I didn't have that. Now, I'm not saying the police didn't give me that from the beginning, but 20 years later,
Sure.
I didn't have that.
Okay.
So I had to go back down there and get that. And when I went back down there, they just looking at me like this crazy lady coming down here talking about somebody missing or whatever. So what I had to do, because I went down there 2-3 times and they just would not hear it. They just wouldn't give me no file. They wouldn't do anything. So finally I went to the library, and one of the librarians helped me pull up his little article that they put in the back of the paper, just a little article. And she helped me pull up that little article, and I took that back down there to them. And then she said, well, we can do a report, but that's all we can do. So I got the little 1-page report, and that's what caused it to go to National Missing Children. Then that's what caused them to, they even did a picture, because I never had a picture of him. So they even did a picture of what he may look like 20 something years later.
Wow. Okay, a couple of questions. So I want that 20-year span. I mean, did you have to kind of build up to have the confidence to pursue the investigation on your own? Were you always sort of looking and hoping? You're probably always hoping and praying, but were you always investigating? What was the turning point for you to go to the police and to try to find these answers that you were missing?
Well, at first I didn't think I had a voice, and I thought I had no power. And since I was dealing with them and they weren't doing anything, I didn't know what to do. So after a while, I just kind of figured out, okay, well, even though you don't know what to do, don't not do nothing. Do something. So when I went down there to try to get the report, and I called National Missing Children, and they were saying they need it. So when I went down there, that's when I started gaining the power, because I realized that if I never went down there, Raymond would have disappeared in like a puff of air. Like, if I never went down there and got that report, he wouldn't have been on paper nowhere saying that he was missing.
Right.
It would just, it would have been, he just disappeared and nothing happened.
Never to be thought of again.
Yeah. So, that there made me just, and then I know how I felt. So that's what gave me the power to do something. I know how it made me feel, because I felt like nobody didn't care about Raymond, and they didn't care about me, and I couldn't just continue to sit still. And I think maybe the meanness of people kind of shut me down too. You know what I'm saying? All the negative stuff, and I didn't really have anybody holding my hand telling me it's going to be okay. So it kind of shut me down, and then nobody would talk about him or whatever. All that was just shut down. So for me, at that time, I just didn't know, like, what do you do? Because I still had that, even though it was years later, I still had that 16-year-old mindset. When it came to him, I still had that mindset of just be quiet and don't nobody else want to talk about it. Don't you talk about it, because, it was all your fault. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I was with that.
I do. I mean, I had my first child at age 19, which is technically an adult, but very young. And nothing that traumatic happened afterward, but you feel so vulnerable as a young mother. You already feel sort of like people are judging you and not thinking you're up for the job. And almost just waiting for you to fail is sometimes how I felt. So I can only imagine how withdrawn you must have become after that happened. Also, finding out there was just one article. Now, it's 1978. I realize news wasn't what it is now, where this would be covered and would probably go viral, and you'd have social media, so many more ways of spreading the word. But still, in 1978, you would think there'd be more coverage in the media. So how do you feel about that, looking back on the lack of interest, or did just people not know?
I was young, I was poor, and I was Black. I stayed in the projects. So I can say they didn't care enough then. And and that's just what it was. But I didn't see that then. I didn't see then that I was a victim and Raymond was a victim. Yes. I did not see that then. You know what I'm saying? So I couldn't speak on what I didn't know. Because had I known, I'd have came out from the beginning fighting for my son. I didn't do that because I didn't know what to do at that time. So I didn't see that. But when I realized that if I didn't go get that little bitty article, my son would have just vanished. Yeah. And never to be seen or heard of again. That's when I realized, they lost the article, this, that, and other. And I'm not even saying, I feel like it was negligence on their part, them losing the article and everything. And I'm so thankful, because I see cases now and they're not when things like that happen now, you got media everywhere. You
Yep.
got all this everywhere. So I'm grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all that is now because of what I didn't have when I was growing up.
So this happened before everything at Grady Hospital. That was in the 1980s, right? When there were lots of kidnappings. I remember listening to this on the Fall Line podcast, which is how I met you.
Right.
So do you think, though, this was sort of leading up to that there were some real problems in that system in terms of security and protecting their patients? I mean, it feels like they really made you vulnerable by letting someone have such close access to you and your child.
I think what that was that's the way it was then.
I guess so,
and they had no reason to do different because nothing happened that would have made them do different.
Yeah.
You know, when babies start getting missing from the hospital and different things, then they start putting in. They didn't do it when just Raymond because that was a incident.
Right.
You know, then I think it's Shante Alexander got missing, and then Tavis Sutton got missing, and different ones started getting missing. Today, kind of say, okay, we need to do something to put something in place so this won't happen anymore. But from the beginning, no, you know, because that wasn't something. So I can't say that it was negligent on Grady's part. I can say that's just the way it was. You could come up and see the babies because we used to go down to the hospital and go up and look at the babies all the time.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was never a problem because the babies was just laid out in the nursery and you just go see the babies or whatever. But, you know, thank God those times changed,
right.
You know, but it took those things to bring about a change.
I know. And just how tragic that you had to be the impetus for that change to start happening.
Right.
So getting that article really was such a smart move on your part. And, you know, I know you felt so powerless when you look back as a young mother, all the things you didn't do, but I feel like now you're more than making up for that, right? In the work that you're doing. So can you talk about now how Raymond's case, as well as others, are your life's work now and what that looks like?
Well, yeah. I know how I felt growing up, and I felt like nobody cared. So once I got with National Missing Children and started doing work for them, volunteer work for them, my whole thing was to just make sure that nobody felt like I felt, like didn't nobody care, you know? Like they kid, because you got long-term kids, you know. I had somebody tell me, why would I keep looking for him? I got other kids. I probably never find him. I just need to let that go. Or, you know, people can say some mean things, but then I remembered how I was feeling as a parent. I wanted to do my part to make sure that didn't nobody else feel like that. So we go out and we spotlight cold cases, but we go out, we hold sign. We normally go to where the person was last seen, phone last ping, a call last found. And we just bring awareness back. We give out flyers, we hold up banners, we do a whole lot of stuff to bring awareness back. And it may not sound like much, but me as a mother, that would mean a lot to me because what you're saying is you care enough to, I did one case, and the little boy had been missing for years. You know, he had got missing in the 80s and they never found him. And I reached out to them and did their case. And they came up here from out of town, and the brothers was like, we didn't think nobody cared. My mom is deceased, but to see this for just my brother, we didn't think nobody cared. So to know somebody take time out, and people that don't know you never thought would come out, you know, a lot of them would just come out and give out flyers all about this case. It may not mean a lot, but for that family, they know that somebody care. And that's what I want to put out there, that we care, you know?
That's so powerful.
Well, yeah, you know, we did a case downtown. The little girl got missing. She got missing in the 80s, Alicia Smiley. And we did her case, couldn't get in touch with the family and anything, but we all went downtown in the blazing hot sun. And while we was down there, I was just talking to her in the air, telling her we haven't forgot you. The little girl was 3 years old when she got missing. She in her 30s now, you know. But I was just talking to her in the air saying, we haven't forgotten you. You know, we know you out there somewhere. We just haven't forgotten you. Did it mean anything? Probably not. I don't know. But I just know my son is missing. And every time somebody like you who will call and say, hey, I would like to hear your story, that means a lot to me.
Oh
For
my
all of
gosh.
the times when didn't nobody care.
Yeah.
So you're gonna take out your time to call me, to let me tell my story to you about that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't just do interviews and just take it for granted. It means a lot for you to say, hey, look, I heard your story. I want you to tell your story. I want you to call and talk about your son.
Yeah.
That means a lot. Because that's all we got right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think, I think there's even research that talks about this, but when someone's going through something really difficult, I think statistically, I don't know what the numbers are, I'm not a researcher, but one person showing support can be the difference between a really bad and a really good outcome, is just one person showing up, right? And I mean, can you imagine the difference if you had one person on your side at age 16?
I don't know what that feel like.
Yeah.
To this day, very day right here, I never even cried on the shoulder for Raymond.
Oh.
I just, because I didn't have that. So I don't know what that feels like to for somebody to just say, hey, look, I'm right here with you. I'm walking with you. I got you. I'm going to hold your hand through this. I don't, but I'm okay with that now because that's the way it went for me.
So where do you tap into to give that to other people? If that wasn't poured into you, like, how do you give it back?
You give it back because you know where you were.
Yeah.
I know where I was, and I know how I was feeling. I felt alone. I felt unloved, and I felt unwanted. And I felt like nobody cared about him. I felt like, because I had family dynamics anyway. So I felt like nobody cared about me. I felt abandoned. I felt all those things, and it would just bring tears to my eyes. So I'm like, Lord, what can I do to just let somebody else know I care? Like, you don't have to feel that way. I can walk with you through this process. I could be right there. Let's get through this together. You ain't got to be by yourself. Because I know what it feel like when you feel like don't nobody care about your loved one. I know what that feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine a more kind of potent resource for a parent, a loved one, a family member dealing with this same struggle.
On Missing, we feature cases that come to us by way of private investigations for the missing. This is the nonprofit founded by Bruce Maitland in honor of his missing daughter, Brianna Maitland.
This is the 5th missing person story we've had licensed private investigators assigned to. Based on their hard work and their diligence, we feel strongly that all of these cases are moving in the right direction.
Please share these stories and follow PIs for the Missing on social media. This is Missing. Goldia, can you tell us about the day that Phoenix disappeared?
Well, Phoenix and I went to church together. She was driving her car because, and again, we were relying on her for transportation because our vehicle had been in the shop for quite some time. She talked to somebody on the phone while we were on our way to church. I later found out who it was. We went early because she had to practice for in the handbell choir. They had their last practice right before the worship service. And I was going to deliver some Mary Kay product while she was at her practice. And she said, Mom, don't go over there and talk. Just make your delivery, collect your money, and come on back because I'm going to be playing in the handbell choir and I want you to be there. So I told her I would, and I did. I got back in time for that. After they played, I looked for Phoenix and the worship service started. I looked for Phoenix in the choir stand because I figured after she plays in the handbell choir, she'll just join the singing choir, and she wasn't there. So I looked on the other side of the sanctuary where she had been sitting for some time, and she wasn't there. And I'm wondering where she is. And all of a sudden I had this feeling, you know, how you can feel somebody watching you. Well, I turned like this and looked over my left shoulder, and there's Phoenix behind me. Not the next pew, but 2 pews behind me. And she smiled. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I looked forward, and I looked at the cross, which was right behind the pastor. And I said, thank you, Jesus. She's coming back. Because she had distanced herself from me. We used to sit side by side on the same pew. Then she kind of inched away. And then she was on the pew behind me, and the 2 pews behind me. And then all of a sudden she's sitting on the total opposite side of the sanctuary. But that Sunday she was 2 pews behind me. After church, we normally go in the fellowship hall, have coffee. Phoenix said she wasn't going to join me. She asked me not to stay all day. So she said she would wait for me in the car. We were on our way home, and she says, Mom, you know, I think we should try to get back to the way we used to be. I says, what do you mean, Phoenix? She said, you know, just more like how we used to be. I said, well, what do you think we should do? Well, why don't we read a book? And at the end of each chapter, you read the book, I read the book, and in the end of each chapter, we get together and we talk about what we thought about that particular chapter. I says, oh, okay. So what book would you like to read? She says, how about Pilgrim's Progress? Well, I'll go to the library. I said, you don't need to go to the library, Phoenix. We have at least 2 copies of Pilgrim's Progress at home. We stopped at Aldi's. I remember stopping to ask her if she wanted something, chicken. And she was over on the other side. She was on the phone. At least she looked as though she was on the phone. And she said, no, get some oranges. We checked out. There was a little tug about who's gonna put the cart back and get the quarter. I asked her to put the box in the car, and I would put the cart back, and she was tugging on the cart. No, I'll do this, I'll do. And finally, she went ahead and put the groceries in the car, and she was driving really crazy on the way home. She was tailgating, driving fast, and I told her to stop driving like that. She seemed to be irritated about something all of a sudden. Everything was fine, but all of a sudden, and I think it had to do with that phone call, whoever she was talking to, when we were in the store. When we got home, she slammed the lift gate on the car, on the SUV, and one of the tomatoes or something went down the driveway. She picked it up. We went inside. The way she was acting, I told her as we were walking up the sidewalk, I said, you know, I'm going to tell your dad how you've been acting, Phoenix, in the last few minutes. And we got inside. We put the groceries away. And Lawrence came in, and I told him, I said, Lawrence, Phoenix has been acting kind of weird on the way home. And he talked to her for a minute. And he said, I think you owe your mom an apology. And she said, Mom, I'm sorry. I said, no problem. I said, give me a hug. And we hugged each other. And she went in her room, I believe. I went in my room. And I think later on she went downstairs because she was outside shooting hoops. I looked out the window and I could see her running around with a basketball. And I thought, my gosh, this girl is 23 years old, and she looked like she was about 14 or 15. She like a little girl. And that's the last I saw of her. Lauren said that she came upstairs and she just went out to her car and didn't say anything. And that bothered me for quite a while. And I finally figured out what it was. He said that she didn't say anything, and Phoenix has never left home without saying something. Without, I'll be right back, I'll see you later, I'm going to the store, I'm going down the street, something. But he said she walked out of the house in a determined fashion, like she was on a mission or something. And she must have sat in her vehicle in the driveway for a few minutes, and then he said he saw her car back out of the driveway.
Later that day, Phoenix Colden's car was found abandoned, and she has been missing ever since. Find her mother's full story as well as many other stories on our show titled Missing from Crawlspace Media.
Follow us at Missing CSM.
I'd like to know, have you learned about kidnapping and likely scenarios of what happened? And when you look back, do you have theories on who Lisa was? Do you think she operated alone? Was she part of a network? Do you have thoughts on that?
That's what they say. I don't know, because I heard so many different stories. Somebody told me that she didn't get on, they saw her, that she didn't get on a bus. That she didn't get in a car. They actually seen her walking another way with the baby. And I asked them, why didn't they tell the police that, when the police questioned them, and they said they didn't want to be involved. They didn't want to get in it. So I don't know. Maybe she just wanted the baby. Maybe. And then maybe they were right and she did sell Raymond. I don't know. That's one of the reasons I took up with the young man that was in Germany who I thought was Raymond.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
I actually thought that he was Raymond. And I've never, somebody reached out to me in Australia and said, I think I found your son, blah, blah, blah. And I kept ignoring it, because the actual same week, I had somebody else reaching out to my family on Facebook saying that they was Raymond. So after a while, you just get tired of that. So when this young man came, and said that he thought that the lady called and talked, she reached out to me on social media and was saying, I think I may have found your son. I think I may have found your son. Well, I wasn't too interested in that. But she reached out to me, and then she reached out to my daughter. And my daughter was like, well, Mama, just check it out and see what's going on. But I was tired.
Sure.
Because that was like the third or the fourth person had showed up saying that. I had my sister-in-law call me at 3:00 in the morning saying, so excited, because she felt like she found Raymond. And she talked to the guy, and she just believed it was him. She reached out to me a few times, and then, so one time I just said, okay. So I talked to her and everything. She said, I've just been working on some cases, and this young man case looked like yo maybe, he's looking for his mom. He was taken from over there. So I reached out to him on Facebook, and we kind of just talked a little bit, and that was it. And then about a few weeks later, I reached back out to him, and he said, he just been doing the research, and he think I'm his mom, but he's not sure or whatever. So we started talking until we was going to get the DNA, because we were sure we was going to get the DNA.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to know too. So he wanted to know, he was looking for his mom seriously, like I was looking for my son.
Yeah.
So we talked for about 4 months straight every day till he started calling me mom. And I was pretty sure with all his information that he was my son. Well, when the DNA came back, it came back negative. And that, because I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to get this close to somebody, and all of the stuff just add up perfectly. And there's no way I was going to get this close to anybody. God was going to let me get this close to anybody and not be Raymond. So I stopped looking for Raymond. Like, all was well with the world. I found him. I'm just waiting on the DNA. So so we can tell the world that we found each other and everything. So I was happy, he was happy or whatever. And so when I found out that it wasn't him, because I felt like God wasn't gonna do that to me. Like, where would I put that hurt? Where would I put that pain? I don't have nowhere to put another disappointment,
Yeah.
So when I found out it wasn't him, I just had to accept that. I just said, well, okay, it wasn't his will or whatever like that. Was I angry? I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. But I wasn't angry at God or angry or anything like that. Because I know God knows what's best. So, but in the meantime, I mean, we still talk. He still calls me mom. We still talk pretty much every day or
Oh, wow.
2 or 3 times a week. So he really looks at me as being his mom, and he's always calling me mom and just, mom this, mom that. So he's a beautiful young man. And so I love him just like he's my son, So but he's still looking and I'm still looking too,
Wow. That's remarkable. And it sounds like the bond is so real. And, I don't know. I was just thinking it's almost like God did have you find each other.
I think that God was like, because I think it's all woven together.
Sure,
God
me
was
too.
like, I'm not going to give you what you asking for. I'm not going to give him what he's asking for. But what I will do right now, I give y'all each other.
Comfort.
Yeah. So I represented what he was looking for.
Yeah.
He was looking for a mom. And he said, he told me one time, he said, when people used to talk to their moms, I used to walk away because I didn't know what that felt like and it would be hurt. He said, but now I know what it feels like to have a mom, So, and then I was looking for my son. Well, I know he's not my son, but he's my son. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but we're both still looking and we're looking forward to meeting each other as well, seeing each other face to face. But yeah, so, but I'm still looking.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for Raymond.
And your belief is that Raymond is alive and probably living a life and has a different name and maybe doesn't know about what happened to him. Is that your thinking?
That's my thinking, yes.
Yeah.
So I do everything I can, even on my show. I come on every Thursday at 11 o'clock. I'll be on tomorrow. But even on my show, that's just another platform that I get people to come on to tell their story their way. And even with that, I'm still looking for Raymond. I'm just, I'm looking for Raymond while I'm trying to help other people. I'm looking for Raymond.
Right. So in your work with other families, you're still just putting your voice out there. And Raymond is part of your work. I mean, his name is in the nonprofit, right? Can you share the name of it?
Raymond Green International Outreach.
Because who knows? I mean, you just don't know where or when that moment might come. Is that what sustains you? Is that what keeps you moving forward?
I pray and I ask God, to ease somebody's mind, ease somebody's heart tonight. Let some mother's heart be eased tonight. Maybe not mine, but let somebody child come home tonight. And then I feel like in my head, because I know 2 things what I do know. I do believe Raymond is coming home. And I think every time somebody comes home, that brings him closer in the line of coming home. That's one thing. The other thing I know is God got the whole world in his hands. I know that and I believe that. So since I know that and I believe that, I know that Raymond and I are together in God's hand. So I know that. I know that for sure. That right there in his hand, we're together.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 things I believe and I know. So when I hear somebody else's kid came home or somebody found their children, I'm like, well, that just brings Raymond closer to coming home.
Donna, it's incredible. I am so blown away by your generosity of being able to sincerely be happy for somebody else because, this could go 2 ways. People could get really withdrawn and jaded and why would someone else be reunited and not me? And maybe you have those moments. I mean, it would be very human. It would be very human.
I had that moment. I was talking to somebody. I was at the training, the National Missing Children, and the young lady, lady got up and she was just saying how, her son had been missing for like 20 years. And one day she got the call and come to find out, her son was alive and well. And make a long story short, and he was in the Army. So I was so angry at her. I was so angry at God. I was so mad because her story was my story. Like my son is in the Army somewhere. He's doing so well. And I'm like, God, why would you give her son and not give me my son? And so when and I remember that when she came, when we was getting ready to go that day, and I asked her, I said, well, what did he say? Because I said, well, can I talk to you for a minute? And she said, yeah. So we went to the side, and I said, well, what did he say to you when y'all got by yourself? And she looked at me, she said, Donna, you're gonna find him. And I was like, yeah, but what did he say? And she just stopped, and she was like, you're going to find him. And I was like, yeah. And then she said it again in the voice. She was like, listen to me, listen, you will find Raymond. And it just brought tears to my eyes. And then she said, I just want you to know that you will find him. And then she asked me, I said, what did he say when y'all got by yourself? And she said, he just held my face and just said, thank you for never giving up on me.
Oh my
And
God.
that just kind of, so the next year when we got together, I had to stand up in front of everybody, I guess like 75, 100 people, whatever, and apologize to her. And she looked at me real strange. And I'm like, because when you got up and told that story last year, I was angry at you. I was angry at God, because why you get your son back and I didn't have my son? I said, so I want to apologize to you for that. And she was like, you held that for a whole year. I said, I'm just so sorry. That was so selfish of me to feel like that, and I just want to tell you in front of everybody, I'm so sorry. And different ones started getting up saying, she said, I was feeling guilty because mine came back and y'all's didn't. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you have those moments and everything, but I have had that moment, but that moment right there taught me. So I don't really feel like that now. When God brings somebody's child home, I just know Raymond in that line.
Yeah.
So if he's number 100, now he's 99. Now he's 98. He's moving closer to coming home. So I'm so thankful for them every time. So I pray, Lord, just ease somebody's heart today. Let some mother smile today.
Such a beautiful way to live, I have to tell you. Like, no matter what you're facing in life, like going with that mindset, it's not my natural state. I have to be honest, Donna. I'm very encouraged right now. I'm very humbled. You were talking about that feeling, that gut feeling when you were 16, a new mom, so young, that you ignored, which we probably now would say was your intuition, a red flag thing. What do you think about that now, and that gift of fear? And what do you tell other women and other people and younger people who are still ignoring that and still being polite and not wanting to, make waves? What would you say to them?
I tell them, when you got that gut feeling, act on it. You may be wrong, but it's better to be wrong than to be right. If you act on it and you was wrong, it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
But suppose you're not wrong. Suppose that gut feeling was trying to tell you something. Act on it. Look at it. Take a look at it, because I had it. I just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. How could you?
So, I tell them now, when you got a gut feeling, you think something is going on, it probably is.
Yeah.
And even if you're wrong, it's okay to be wrong, but I'd rather for you to be wrong and acted on it than not to have acted on it and that gut feeling was right. Something was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you, looking back, could see you were a victim, and you clearly now, in my eyes, are a survivor. Can you see that journey? Can you see young Donna and now Donna, being a survivor, and like kind of the journey from victim to survivor?
Yeah, but I know this sounds crazy, but I thank God for that journey. I thank God that I went through all that, because it made me the person I am today, to understand other people in their journey. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it helped me. Yes, I do. I get it. I get what's going on, and so I'm just not altogether in that place where I was a victim. I was a victim. And I hate the fact that I didn't know what I know now. But if all things work together for good, and I do know that it does work together for good, then it was for me to go through that. Because when I got my voice, you can't take it away from me now. Now I got a voice for me. And if you don't have a voice, I can speak for you too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's hard won what you have. You've earned it and you've survived it. Tell me how people can find you and connect to you. And is your live show is Thursday mornings. It's not like a podcast. You have to tune in at the time. Is it? Can we all hear it? Tell us about how we find you.
Well, it's on Foxtrap. It's on foxtrapradio.com. It's every Thursday morning from 10 to 11.
Eastern.
And you can't go back and look at it. You have to look at it then.
Okay.
So I'm working on that.
Yeah. We're going to do that. But that's great. So people can tune in from anywhere, though, in the country?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's in 153 countries, so you can tune in from anywhere.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Look at you. You're like a global voice now in this conversation, you know?
Isn't that awesome?
It's so incredible. It really, really is. So, Donna, something I ask all my guests at the end of our conversation is what is keeping you up at night? And that can be literal or not.
Just the fact that I know that Raymond is out there and there's a whole lot of other parents out there that feel like I do. So sometime in the bed, I'm like, Lord, what else can I do? Who else can I help? You know, and I lay in wait sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out who can I help? You know, what else can I do to make people see how much I care about their situation? So that's what keeps me up at night. Because I know it's a parent out there that I haven't got to yet that really want to feel like somebody care, and I haven't got to them yet. So I'm just, you know, I just pray and ask God, you know, to show me who else I need to help, what else I need to do.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your life and your story and your work on Dialogue tonight. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Honestly, I'm blown away. I feel really like I needed to hear this tonight. So thank you for the encouragement for me.
Thank you.
Dialogue is a Yellow Tape Media production edited by Jason Usry and produced and hosted by me, Rebecca Sebastian. Please be sure to subscribe to Dialogue, a true crime conversation, wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media. We are at Dialogue Pod across all platforms. You can also drop me a note or a guest suggestion or sign up for my newsletter at RebeccaSebastian.com. Be sure to join me every Wednesday for a new episode and another killer conversation. She's Birdie is back, and I couldn't be happier about it. Dialogue is doing a 4-part series on survivors, and what better sponsor than She's Birdie to help us all be more prepared to survive should something unexpected happen to us. She's Birdie is a personal alarm that is most importantly easy to use and effective. The alarm is super loud and easy to activate when you need to, but impossible to activate accidentally. That's really important. Not as important, but worth mentioning, they're really cute. The founders worked hard to design a product you don't mind wearing on your handbag or your gym bag or car keys. Each one comes with a gorgeous brass ring, and the alarms come in fun colors, but also charcoal if you aren't into fun colors. Hi. And there's new colors coming later this spring. And if all of that weren't enough, She's Birdie gives back every time you buy one. To date, they have donated $50,000 to local women's shelters and to assist in changing legislation to protect victims of abuse and violence. Don't wait. Prepare yourself and the people you want to protect in your life with a She's Birdie personal alarm now. Dialogue listeners get 10% off when they use the code DIEHARD. DIEHARD. Go to shesbirdie.com and use the code DIEHARD for 10% off at checkout. Chirp loudly.